Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of Thursday, May 21st, 2020. And greetings to all of us across the Sunshine Coast and our television audience. I'd like to call to order this meeting and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the traditional territories of the Sechelt and Squamish First Nations. Our first business is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? I see it moved and seconded. Are there any amendments, changes, reorderings, typos? Director Hiltz?
Did you have a new business item to add? We discussed in agenda review, the Reed Road pathway. Is that on or off?
I believe that's going to be covered off in the water report.
Okay.
So I think we're good to go. In that case, could I see everyone in favor of the agenda? Anyone opposed? Good, that passes. So our first item is the top of the news from Infrastructure Services. General Manager, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present you with a water supply update for this month, and I'm going to share a screen with you. Let's see if it all works. Okay. Move this around. So the water supply update for this month will start as every month with what's the situation of the snowpack. This month we were able to get back up. The chopper companies, the helicopter companies all adjusted their, made all their helicopters COVID proof, so we're able to complete a snow survey a little bit later than usual, but we're able to complete it in May. And the snowpack at Chapman is below average, and it's just above what it is, what it was a year ago, which was pretty low. And that's the same in Chapman and Edwards are the same, both below average and just above what it was a year ago. And in terms of snow melt, the big difference compared to last year is that this year it's cooler weather than last year. So even though the snowpack is comparable to what it was a year ago, we foresee that snow melt itself will be slower than it was a year ago, but I will come back to that later. In terms of the weather, Environment Canada is predicting an increased likelihood for warmer than normal in the months to come, but it's a low probability. So it's not the high red areas, deep red areas are where there is a high likelihood, almost uncertainty that it is above average, and that's not the case for our region, but there is a significant chance that we'll get normal or above normal temperatures. And in terms of precipitation, that's still too far ahead to predict what it will look like after the snow melt has gone somewhere in June. So what's the demand? Demand at the moment is comparable to what it was a year ago. The precipitation today has been lower than it was last several years. You can see that in the graph. That's a blue line. So it has been dry, and in April we saw a huge spike in demand, actually almost a summer demand, where when we had a couple of days over the 20 degrees Celsius, which was pretty alarming for us. But May, due to the cooler weather, people have been using their irrigation systems less, and ultimately the overall demand is average over the last 2 months has been comparable to last year. So in terms of stages, as of May 1st, all systems are stage 1. The regional water system last year, stage 2 went into effect as of June 1st. Compared to last year, temperature is a little bit lower. Snowpack is comparable. This demand is currently comparable to last year. So if I can make any predictions, I would expect that stage 2 to be expected to be cold somewhere mid to late June this year. It all depends on the amount of rain we get in upcoming months. If if it's warm and rainy, then there will be an increased snow melt, which might expedite the need to call stage 2. Eastbourne water system. The water levels are decreasing there, and that's for that system since last year the trigger for us to, and because it's not going to rain anytime soon there as well, we don't see an opportunity there that that aquifer will be recharged again. So stage 2 will be in effect there as of today, and yesterday we sent notices to the relevant people in that community to make that known. So I want to make use of the opportunity to provide a quick update to the board and the community on the water supply projects update. We received good news from the province late last week, that our loan authorization bylaw for Church Road wellfield project was approved. So that means that we can move ahead with organizing an alternative approval process, and report on timelines for that will be brought forward at next week's committee meeting. On today's agenda, there's the award report for the drilling of test wells on 5 new sites, and for the environmental flow need update for Chapman Creek. The contractor started, and there's still provincial approval required. We hope to get it in place late June, at about the time when we also call stage 2. And that will be really to assess what the impact would be to fish populations of a flow below 200 liters a second. We're currently targeting 2 flows. One is 180 and one is 150, and the table shows that the total contribution to the water supply deficit, as we calculated it to be for 2025, would be in the order of 5 to 13%. So that's a good amount. Definitely worthwhile exploring further. And that's why we're really hoping that we can get everything in place to do the monitoring of the potential impacts of these lower flows this year for full implementation next year. Engagement opportunities. This Monday, directors and staff will host an opportunity to talk about the utility bills. We received several hundreds of phone calls, emails on why the increase to the utility bill this year was as it is. This Monday, there's an opportunity to engage, have a dialogue with the directors and staff on that. It's May 25th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And more information on how residents can participate is available on our website. And we're launching a new program where residents can, on a monthly basis, can get an email from us with their water usage for that month. And this is all new, so we're starting it right now. If residents are interested in participating in the program, just send an email to infrastructure@scrd.ca, and they'll get guidance on how to sign up for this program. And as I indicated before at earlier meetings, we're nonstop looking for a system. Is it all working well? Are our meters functioning correct? What are the metering reads? And one of the things we noticed is that last year we installed a new flow meter at our treatment plant in South Pender. And unfortunately, we discovered that the other meters that are installed in the plants and that were installed by the contractor when the plant was built in 2014 were programmed incorrectly, and as a result were under-recording the actual flows to in magnitude, as we currently can identify, between 10 plus minus several percent. However, we feel that it might be that the variation might be bigger with higher flow, so we only can see over the summer what the actual under recording of the actual flows of the plant are, and what are the implications could be for policy decisions for that system. And I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have.
This works much better when we've got the screen back. So I see a question from Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. The water meter reporting program that residents can sign up for, obviously you need a water meter for that to work. Is it only the rural areas, or are residents in Sechelt with newer homes that do have water meters able to sign up for this program as well?
Thank you for the question. Those meters are currently not being read by us actively. If we get, so for now it's no. We might reconsider that moving forward to include them in our reads moving forward, but currently we're not reading those meters.
Just as a follow-up, is that just a staff capacity issue, or is that because you can't read all of Sechelt? It seems unfair to read part of Sechelt. It's an inequity because sometimes we do a drive-by there, but we're not monitoring it on a frequent basis like we do for the other areas. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. You talked about the environmental flow needs on Chapman and hoping that everything can go smoothly this year for that. I know we ran into some issues last year because of water flows, etc. What are the things we're going to be looking at? What are the conditions that need to be in place? Like, how do we ensure that it actually can get done this year? What are the things that we have to watch for or hope for?
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. So what is needed is we need authorization from the province. So a contractor is currently working on a monitoring plan for to ensure that it's safe for the fish that are present, the juvenile fish that are present in the creek at this point in time, that we're not stranding any fish, killing any fish when we're lowering the flows. So that is the monitoring plan that the contractor is currently in place that we need to get approved by the province. Okay. Once that's approved, we need to have actually a situation where we can lower the flows to that level. And the only way we can do that if it's really dry, and the natural flows will allow us to actually drop the water levels to 150, 180. So we need two things in place. We need long, dry weather, and we need so that the natural flow drops anywhere between 150 and 180, and then we can manipulate it a little bit, and we need to have the monitoring approved. In terms of the plan, there's work from last year, there's work from previous years, so our contractor is working on that right now. We're working with the province to give them a heads up that we're going to connect with them soon again and need their support imminent almost. So we're hopeful there. I don't foresee any issues there yet. So yeah, fingers crossed that we can pull it off in time for this year. And actually, we only need a couple of weeks of low flow. Not the province will never allow us to do that on a permanent basis this year. But we just need a long enough period for us to do the monitoring of the flows and the potential impacts.
All right, thank you.
Director Hiltz.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. I got a couple of questions, but I'll just give one. It's about the Eastbourne water system and the stage 2 restrictions and the drivers on that. Is it demand side or is it the aquifer side? That's the part of, and then there's, Eastbourne is completely metered. And do they have that ability to get this, the monthly metering data to individuals on Eastbourne?
On the first question, it is really a combination. What we're seeing in terms of demand and supply. One of the triggers to go to stage 2 in the Eastbourne system is the moment when the water levels in the wells are going down and are going down consistently, and we're not seeing any recharge opportunities anytime soon. So there's no rain, there's no significant amount of rain in the forecast. And even if they're currently at the level that even if it would rain a day, they would not recharge back up to full capacity. So, and at the same time, due to COVID, there are several more people residing at Keats than there used to be on a more full-time basis. So it is the supply that is driving it, but the demand is also a driver as well. In terms of the meter reads, I have to come back to that question because I'm not sure. We're not reading the meters actively at Eastbourne, and I'm not sure if they're easy to be read as well. So I will get back to that question.
Okay, Director Ties.
Good morning, everyone. My question is if we know what the hatchery is doing this year and how our plans might affect them.
Thank you for the question. I've been informed that hatchery is releasing all fish or moving offside all fish this year. So just like last year, there won't be any active operations of the hatchery over the summer. Because they don't have the ability to draw water legally from the creek when we're hit to 200 liters a second. So last year they therefore moved all fish off coast, and this year I think they will move at least they will release a lot of fish, and maybe they also move something on coast, but at least they're not operating.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with the question that I have. I was hoping that the water main replacement along Reed Road would present an opportunity to pave the north shoulder Reed Road in association with this project. Since we have to pay for paving anyway, could we pave the north shoulder? What is the possibility of that happening?
There is a chance. However, the north side of the road is actually MOTI right away. The south side is Town of Gibson's. Currently, the main that the SCRD is sharing with the Town of Gibson's is located on the south side within the Town of Gibson's area. And we are currently looking at what would be financially and operationally the most beneficial location for the new main. Would it be on the north side or the south side? If it would be on the south side, it would be within the Town of Gibson's area. And if that's the case, then that might be financial more attractive for us. So we're currently exploring that with the Town of Gibson's and with our contractor to see if we can actually technically do that. So there's still a chance that we need to go to the north side, to the MOTI right away, and in that case, we will engage with MOTI on what their requirements will be and what the opportunities will be in terms of ditching, road paving, etc., etc.
Do you have a timeline on when we'll know?
Given the timeline of the project, that will be that has to be confirmed within the next 2 months, because we need to move ahead as well. So that's active work that's currently being undertaken.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Director Kroll might go ahead. I've already had one question. So,
Director Kroll.
This isn't so much a question. Just with respect to the Reed Road work, the town of Gibsons has approved all the funding and are good to go as soon as we can get together with the district and collaborate on the thing. So we're all set and good to go.
Good to hear. Director Hiltz.
Thank you. The Pender water meter drew my attention, and typically, water meters don't improve in accuracy. They tend to get worse over time. 6 years looks like about 5 or 10% out. So my question is, of these large meters, it looks like a large meter in the regional district, is there a program to assess the accuracy on an annual basis, to get the information that we're 10% over 6 years can have some kind of policy issues or data analysis issue. So what's the regional district's plan to make sure that other meters aren't out by 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or even 100%? I've seen meters 100% out in other facilities.
Thank you for the question. And just to clarify, the meters installed in 2014 at the plant are all functioning well. It's a program. There was a program error made by the contractor when the plant was commissioned and delivered to us. So in the meantime, we can easily correct that ourselves, but we're not doing it at the moment so that we can get the comparison and see the amount we have been under recording. As you indicated, it might be around 10%. And I'm not aware of that meter itself. They are functioning perfectly fine. So I guess we're nonstop looking at meters to see if they're still accurate, comparing data, comparing flow data with meter reads, et cetera, et cetera. So we're nonstop working on that. And that's why we installed last year this meter in Pender, because we want to get more detailed information of the flow of the plant. Not only on a daily basis, but on a smaller time frame. So we installed in a different location in the plant a high quality meter, and that's how we figure this one out, which is very important, especially because it has been under recording.
I have one more question. Fisher Road, Street, Avenue, whatever it is, where we're putting in the new pump station, just above Church Road Wellfield there, has a known flooding problem. And right behind the Grantham's Hall area is the Niagara of Grantham's. And I'm wondering if the extensive work we're going to need to do on the project will provide an opportunity to resolve some of the drainage issues around there and divert water away from Niagara.
It's a good question. And that's a question we've been also asked frequently by the residents in the area in terms of impacts and opportunities. We will repave entire Church Road and Elphinstone Avenue, and also part of Fisher. As part of the work, we'll connect and work together and follow the direction from MLTI in terms of what their standards are. So in this discussions, we'll explore what we can do within our project, which is without significant financial implications, but are there opportunities for us to work together with them, and maybe they can contribute funding to improve whatever is needed there in terms of drainage. So we'll work with MLTI to the extent we can do within the project budget to address any of the issues that are currently present. And that's the same for the situation along Reed Road, where the part between Reed Road and Fisher, between North and Fisher, where our water main is currently also already fully in the MOTL right away. If there are some opportunities there to improve the drainage situation as part of this project, we'll of course include it.
That's great. And if you need any advocacy work, the board, we're here. This is one of our hot button issues, so we're happy to help. Director Pratt.
Thank you. Just around the advocacy piece, I've been keeping the MLA and the Member of Parliament in the loop on these projects because they're especially around, as you call it, the Niagara of Granthams, just because it is such a it's a concern in the area with the residents, but it's also a very key infrastructure project for us. So, so they're being kept in the loop with how everything is progressing and of any concerns that we have in the area. So if we do need further advocacy, they're ready to go for and go to bat for us.
One answer to a question I was going to get back to Director Hiltz on. Last year, we've been able to read the meters at Eastbourne, and this year we're trying to do that as well, but due to COVID, might be a little bit more complex, but it's definitely our intent to read the meters there. And if so, residents there can, of course, also apply, sign up for the program.
Director Hiltz, you have a question?
Yeah, GM Remco mentioned it's about the groundwater. So I'm gonna, I think, maybe wait for the answer. I'll ask the question, wait for the answer at that session. It's about the location of the targets and the firmness of the targets and the flexibility of the targets. So, but I think it's probably better in Annex B, I think. It's your choice.
You mean the targets for?
Yeah, but you know, are they fixed under the terms of the RFP, or can they be adjusted in?
The targets for 150 and 180. Oh, you mean the target? Oh,
drill targets. Sorry, the drill targets. But yeah, whether you want to do that in that section or.
Let's discuss it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
That makes sense. Okay, Director Pratt.
Just one note that I was just reminded of. There is some new infrastructure funding pockets that are available because of COVID. And they've changed the timelines on them just to help with, I should say the province with provincial, with the provincial approval lens. To accelerate some of the funding pockets. And there's the potential that Church might actually be, the Church Road project might actually be available or be eligible, I should say, for this funding. The details just are coming out, I think, this week. I don't know if they've, I haven't seen anything solidified yet, but there is the potential, as long as we haven't broken ground, that we might be eligible for funding a lot faster than what we thought. And that's fairly new information. It's public already, though, so I've forwarded on, but just so the rest of the board is aware as well. So we're just waiting on details to see if we can apply, and then maybe put some pressure on.
Good. Money, good.
Or if not, I've got the big, hound here who can, bark up someone's tree. So.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything further. No further questions on this item. If so, that was a good discussion, folks. If so, we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, number 3, which is a report from our Chief Financial Officer on 2020 utility fees penalty deferrals. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So in mid-April, the SCRD utility bills were released, and due in part to the many new water projects, the curbside organics, and financial realignment of water facilities. Many of the services saw some significant rate increases for 2020. So this resulted in a considerable amount of feedback from the public. Had several calls, lots of social media type of engagement with the community. So the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a significant amount of implications to the community. So in recognition to that, staff have presented 3 options to defer interest penalties for the committee's consideration. So the first one includes deferring interest penalties to September 30th. The second option is to not charge interest penalties for 2020. And lastly, that we make no change. So staff have provided the estimated financial implications to these scenarios, and it's recommended that the application of interest penalties for 2020 be postponed to September 30th, which aligns with lots of other provincial deferral programs. So staff also wanted to provide the committee with an update on the amount of utility bills paid to date. At the time of the report, we had received approximately $1 million. That has gone up to $2 million as of this morning. So that still leaves a receivable of about $4.7 million. And the due date currently right now is June 15th. So I can take any questions if the committee has any. Thank you.
Good. I'm wondering, I'm just going to jump backwards for one moment. I'm sorry about this, but Jim Rosenboom, could we get a copy of your presentation put on the SCRD website so that everybody can see it?
It will be there later this morning or early this afternoon.
Okay. Now, in the interval, questions are coming up. Director Pratt.
First, thank you for I forgot to ask GM Rosenboom for that as well, so that's fantastic. I just had a question regarding the monthly payments or a payment schedule that residents can be set up on. Are they charged any additional fees to set up monthly payments? And is there any process that they have to do to enroll in that process? Or can they just simply send in payments as they send payments? Like, what's the process for setting up a scheduled payment plan?
So we don't proceed like with a recreation membership where money gets sucked out like a pre-authorized payment. That's not the application, because that actually entails all sorts of different considerations. So what folks can do is just go on their online bank, or they can set up an automatic recurring charge on the My SCRD account through their credit cards. We already have quite a few businesses and people who do that. And so what happens is if they did it every month, they would just sit on a credit on account and it would be applied there. So there's not an application. It's essentially that folks can do that on their own. And the staff have been informing people of that. And most certainly we'll be making that known on our utility bills as forward.
Follow up, Director Pratt?
Yes, if they do a monthly payment, and so let's say June 5th, or they don't pay by the initial due date, and they're on the monthly payment, would they be charged interest on any amount owing for the rest of the year? Even if, would they be charged on the next 11 months or 10 months, or if, because it could be shown that they were making payments, would the fee still be there or not for a later fee?
It depends on the timing. So because our utility bills are from January 1st, theoretically, January 1st, or utilities received from January 1st to December 31st. It depends when they start those utility payments on a monthly basis. So if they started now and only paid, $25 a month, yes, they would be most likely, they would be charged an interest payment if that amount for 2020. So they would have to almost do like a catch up and pay by that particular due date. Now, if I could also add, the way that in 2016, late 2016, implemented in January 1st, 2017, we changed the way we applied penalties. It used to be that if you didn't pay by the next day of the due date, you were charged a 10% flat penalty. So that's why we reverted to a 2% monthly, which is not compounded. So we've actually, it's quite reduced. And so last year, for instance, the average was about, $5 a month if you hadn't paid your bill.
That's good. I'm going to interrupt myself for a moment because I forgot to ask for a motion to receive all of our reports and communicate and correspondence. I see a motion. I see second. All in favor? Thank you very much. Now that we've received it, we can get back to discussing it. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. My question is I personally try to pay my utility bill as close to the due date as I can. I like to hold on to my money when I can. So I'm wondering if we could get an update on June 15th as to where we're at.
As far as payments go and how much we've received?
Yeah.
Yeah, most certainly we can provide the committee with that update.
That'd be great.
Hey, Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of questions just to kind of understand the dollar values with the various options. So I'm kind of reading that option 1 is a $24,000 variance, option 2 is 80,000, and option 3 would be 0. So the variances would be made up by user fees or by taxation. How would the variances be made up in those scenarios?
Yeah, so the particular financial analysis that has been provided are really estimates because it depends on the actual activity that we receive. And we're just using 3 years trends as sort of a guide. So how those amounts would be made up, we would have to contemplate as like the 3rd or 4th quarter, because it really just means we no longer have that funding that we anticipated, which pays for operational items. So that's why, again, staff are recommending that second option because it most likely has the least amount of impact. So essentially it would be future user fees if there was a deficit, or it would mean a reduction to the contribution to operating reserves.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. On page 3, it talks about option 1 and option 2. Option 1 would be deferring penalties to, be applied at September 30th. Option 2 is no penalties. But option 2 starts out with saying any utility fees and charges that are not paid by December 31st are then transferred to property taxes. That would be the same with option 1, would it not?
It is, exactly. Yeah. So essentially we just, if people don't pay, that automatically happens anyway.
Okay, and then further on, sorry, there's some clanging in the background. Further on, I think you talk about, so I guess I'm looking at cash flow for the municipality in this. So if the property or the utility bills are not paid and it gets added to property taxes, then next year in 2021, when the District of Sechelt is required to pay to the regional district the amount that we've gathered, we would also have to pay that amount as well. Is that correct?
Correct. So there is a downward stream. Thank you for pointing that out.
Good. I see no further questions. I was hoping for a motion. Anybody feeling like a motion, Director Seegers?
I would like to move option 1, that we defer the interest, charges, and penalties from June 16th to September 30th.
Are you moving the recommendations on page 1 of the agenda package, perchance?
Let me go back and look at those recommendations. Yes, as
Good.
presented.
I see a seconder. Do we have any further discussion on the motion on the?
Yes, one point. I think there was a request that we get an update on probably closest following June 15th. I think staff will just take that. I don't think it needs to be part of the recommendation, but because it talks about Q3.
I don't know about you, but I have my payments set to automatically go on June the 15th. So I imagine that a huge flood of money comes into the SCRD that day. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you very much. And thank you for that excellent report. So next on the agenda is sources of funding for solid waste programs. Over to GM Rosenboom.
I'll have our manager for solid waste programs doing this introduction.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This report summarizes the sources of funding for SCRD solid waste programs and is being provided as per Board Resolution 2620. And thanks, and staff welcome the opportunity to answer any questions the committee may have.
So it was interesting having the information laid out in this format, and it helps us understand, I think, where the funding comes from. Do we have any questions? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the main question is what cannot be put into 350? Like there's quite an assortment of programs that have developed over the year, and is there a limitation of what can be put? Like what are the parameters that something can be funded through 350?
Don't all jump up at once.
I think she's waiting for you.
Oh, I think Robin will be able to answer the question if she finds the mute button again.
I was actually going to defer this to Tina, because it likely depends on what type of program or service you're looking to fund, and that would depend on the response for what could be funded from Function 350. But it is funded from regional taxation, so that all folks are contributing to that function.
So if I could, Chair, 350, regional solid waste encompasses all of the various solid waste initiatives. So if the initiative or program aligns with the solid waste management plan, I think that's your key guiding document there. So if it aligns with that, and of course, just regional solid waste encompasses our landfills as well, and all of our depots, etc. So it's everything waste related.
Great, thank you. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding the backyard composter rebate program on page 16. First of all, what does that look like? I guess we're not selling these backyard composters. Do they just send a receipt? Do we make sure that it's an appropriate composter that is somewhat animal proof? Or those are some of the questions I have. And then we're also not measuring the diversion that happens through backyard composting. So I'm wondering if there's any way that we can collect some kind of data to actually give us an idea as to how effective this program is, and how effective or how much waste does actually get diverted through backyard composting in the regional district.
Yep, go.
Thank you for the question. So the backyard composter rebate program came forward as a budget proposal in 2020, and then based on sort of competing priorities and workload, it's been deferred to 2021, but it is structured, or supposed to be structured, as a rebate. So we would have parameters around the types of composters that would be considered. Residents would purchase them, submit a receipt, and receive reimbursement, similar to the water rebate programs that the SCRD has in place. For the second question regarding diversion, there are some good statistics out there from other programs and other jurisdictions around quantities of material that can be diverted through backyard composting, so we could reference those. As well as when we launch the program, perhaps there's an opportunity to see if any residents are interested in providing some of that data, which would require weighing the material prior to depositing in their backyard composter.
Okay, good. Next up is Director Lee.
I have several questions, but I'll just go one at a time here and then wait my turn. There's a table 2 summarizes the operating costs for the 2 sites, excluding SCRD staffing and associated overhead. They're talking about tipping fees. How is the SCRD staffing and associated overhead funded, and what's the logic for not including that in the tipping fees?
I can jump in, and I can always have our CFO correct me if I'm wrong, or add something. The tipping fees are funding the operational staff at the landfill. They are not included in this overview because this is primarily the programs we're running. The day-to-day operational costs are funded by tipping fees, and those budget numbers are included in our budget documents. So in this report, we only talked about the actual programs itself.
Good. Okay, next on the list is Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, my question is about the coupon programs, and just from our silos of 350 and 355, and the coupon programs are funded differently. Is that a defensible position, or is this just kind of how it evolved over the years? Like, was this just a little bit of background on why we ended up with the same function, same service, paid for through 2 different functions?
Great question. Who's going to tackle that one?
Thanks for the question. So the Pender Harbor Coupon Program started first. I believe it started in 2008. So the decision at that time by the board at the time was to institute this coupon program and fund it from the tipping fees from the Pender Harbor transfer station. So that's the history on that program. The other coupon program that relates to function 355, which are for those residents who receive the refuse collection service, the coupon program was put in place around 2012 or 2013. And that was to replace the program where residents would place items at the end of their driveway. The spring cleanup is what it was called. So to end that program, the decision was to put in a coupon program. And so it's funded by the users or the participants of that service.
Okay. Next up is Director Ties.
Hi. Question again on composting. Sorry to loop back on that. I'd also like to figure out as to how many people are already doing backyard composting, and I think that would be helpful for us to get some sort of more accurate metrics as to what we can expect from our organics collection program, as well as how much uptake there's going to be for our rebate program. So I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can get some sort of numbers in that direction.
Staff?
Thanks for the question. One approach that could be initiated in 2021 ahead of the rebate program would be in the form of a questionnaire. If residents are interested in answering if they are already backyard composting. We do have some data from when we were doing the outreach for the organics diversion strategy. So I would have to reference that to see what specific data we collected. I believe we have some data around what residents were doing with their food waste based on the types of food waste.
based on my purely unscientific opinion, people who are backyard composting tend to be more sort of conscientious, involved citizens. And so I think they disproportionately answer questionnaires and come out to meetings. So I think that it would be really hard to get an accurate measurement, but that's my opinion. Over to Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. The coupon program in Pender, the 2019 program, ended when we anticipated the 2020 program to start. When we asked the residents to refrain from using the coupon because of the backup at the dump, I thought we told them that their coupon would be good. The 2019 coupon would be good until the 2020 coupon was issued. But they're now being told at the dump that the coupons are not valid. I was trying to figure out if this was a strategy to collect more revenue or if I misunderstood the original answer.
Staff, please.
Thanks for the question. The coupons expired as per the date printed. What we did do for 2020 is we delayed the start date. So the printed start date on the Pender coupon as well as the coupon for the refuse collection residents starts after Labor Day. So that was a decision based on the conversations that staff had, and I believe came up at the last committee meeting around, could we delay the start date?
I understood that the decision at that time was to continue the monitoring the 2019 coupons until the 2020 were reissued, simply to stop the backup at the dump of a rush to beat the expiry date. Is that incorrect?
I think it is incorrect indeed. The current we looked at it, but given that the date is printed on the individual coupons, those expired, and the reason for us to delay the start date of the new ones is really to reduce the number of residents coming to the landfill at this point in time to reduce to allow for proper social distancing, etc. But it's all residents should have their 2020 coupon currently, so they can, if they collect their the waste they would like to use the coupon for several months, they can use it as of September 9th.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm just looking for some clarification on charges. This is probably a Tina question. So in table 4, page 17, it talks about curbside garbage collection. This is function 355 for electoral areas B, D, E, and F only, and it says user fees. So I'm just looking for a split of cost here. So it talks about curbside garbage collection. It says provision of weekly collection of 177-liter can. So does this function pay for the collection only, or does it pay for the collection and tipping fees for the landfill for disposal? Because if we go back to page 15, where we're looking at 350 regional solid waste, it says that the operations are funded from user fees. So I know when the trucks that pick up dump, there's a fee charged. Is that collected then through 350 or through 355?
Staff?
So yeah, Robin can answer too, but the 355, so the rural areas, B, D, E, and F, they pay their own tipping fees. So all the services born in that particular service are paid there. So the ones that are collected through the landfills are for the municipal solid waste or other programs or other commercial types of things. So I don't know if Robin wants to add anything, but yeah.
Yeah, the only other item to add would be if residents self-hauled their materials to the Seashell landfill, then they would pay the tipping fee directly.
Good. Director Lee, we're back to you.
Good. On page 16, it talks about the actual operating costs, and a portion of the tipping fees collected at the Seashell landfill are used to fund operation costs at the Pender Harbor transfer station, and the estimated amount is $453. I was trying to figure out well, first of all, I'm kind of curious why it's there at all. But up on the previous page, it said that Seashell collects $924,000. You collect $421,000 from Pender. So if I add that $453,000, I've got $800,000. We must use all of the Seashell tipping fees then. Or is that out of context in this report?
Who wants to tackle that?
So I can start. Most certainly, yes, the Seashell landfill tipping fees have historically, or the Seashell landfill has historically funded the shortfall to run the past landfill and or the transfer station up in Pender Harbor. So like I said before, we just treat regional solid waste as all of these different programs per se. And that's just how the landfills transfer stations have been historically funded. We've tried to fund those particular programs or that service through the tipping fees.
So the information in here, then I can't find the details about the total program by looking at the information that's been presented in this report then.
I think that's a correct assumption. I think that's correct. This report would not allow you to, does not present the total operating cost, revenue versus and expenditures only to operate the Pender Harbor transfer station. It gives the overview of the entire service, and given that we're also not treating it as individual line items, we're treating it as one big service we're providing, and from that point of view, it's appropriate that one facility supports another.
Okay, there's nobody else in the queue. Director Lee, if you've got more questions, you're it.
No, I'm in trouble with this coupon thing because someone told a couple of my people that the coupon was good. And then when they went to dump it, it wasn't, and they had to pay. I might have to pay for their dumping fees here. It wasn't a good situation, and it's not made clear on the frequently asked questions. I would like to see it made clear on the frequently asked questions if possible.
Okay, we'll ensure that there is clear messaging around that. We'll take that on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there's nobody else in the queue. I know it's only 10:30, folks, but I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break and because I think we will have some discussion on the regional diversion update. So if we can resume at 10:36, that would be awesome. Okay, and we are resuming our Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of May 21st, 2020. Next up on our agenda is, and this time I'm correct, it is our General Manager with the Regional Diversion Annual Update.
Thank you very much for being correct this time, but I'm still having my managers in solid waste programs doing the introduction.
Thank you. This report is provided annually and summarizes the SCRD's regional diversion from 2011 to 2019, which are the first 8 years of the SCRD's solid waste management plan. For 2019, overall, there was an increase to waste disposed, a decrease to diversion, with a resulting increase to the disposal per person per year. That's primarily the result of burying of roofing and contaminated wood in 2019. However, when compared to other BC regional districts, the SCRD remains below the 2017 provincial average of 506 kilograms per person per year. And thank you, and staff welcome the opportunity to answer any questions the committee may have.
Well, I still think it's a horrible amount of garbage that we are generating in our community, even if we are slightly less awful than many other regional districts. Director Lee, you're up.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm on page 21 or page 2 of 9. When we talk disposal, I'm looking at the chart, by the way, and I'm looking at 2019, and there's 2 line items. One's the Pender Harbor Transfer Station, and then the other one's the Seashelt Landfill. Does the Seashelt Landfill number include the transfer station number?
No, so we separated it out so that you can see the line items for what goes to the transfer station versus what was received directly at the Seashelt landfill. That's why the total disposal includes both sites.
Thank you. I didn't do that part of the math.
Good. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. During agenda review, we briefly talked about, and this was talked about PMAC a little bit, that this could be, PMAC is looking at having this on their next agenda, as it was brought to their attention. So they're very much interested in this. And the thing that I note is that since we've been kind of flatlined for forever. We had an anomalous year in, what was that, 2013, but we're essentially the same as we were on a per capita basis. So whether it's within the board's discretion to send this to PMAC to get some feedback of ideas of why are we kind of flatlined? My recollection is back in '97 when we went from 2 cans to 1 can was a big 20% drop, and there's anticipation of the food waste dropping our contributions, but there's and I feel that the growing economy seems to justify the waste, and I just think that there needs to be some uncoupling of the weight of our economic well-being and waste generation. And is this a PMAC kind of a question?
Over to staff.
First of all, thank you for the question. I'll start in maybe manager solid waste programs can jump in later. I think in terms of the, yes, I think this report can be referred to PMAC. It's not one of the one of the recommendations currently, but it could definitely be referred if the board would like to do so. And I think ways to, yes, there are always opportunities to improve. And I think the update of the solid waste management plan that is proposed in a couple of years will allow for that discussion to be had with the community, amongst directors, amongst staff. And I think it will be in part guided by the decision on what to do with when the landfill is closed. And what are the financial consequences of that? There could be balancing required between, let's put it that way, if we have a very expensive, if the tipping fees would need to increase significantly due to the fact that a new long-term disposal option for solid waste is very expensive, it could drive different decisions in terms of diversion and then if that's not the case. And that same thing happen. The same thing is the case if the market for recyclables can change as well. Because the reason why we're now burying roofing is because initially it was recycled, and that's why it was a diversion program. But ultimately, last several years, it was buried just at the landfill somewhere in the States. And that's why last year we decided to just bury it in our own landfill and forgo all the GHG emissions and all the costs associated with burying it somewhere else. So it is really, there's two sides to it. There's the waste generation, waste diversion, which is really a supply-demand issue, and there is a question of what is the financial incentive. Would there be a financial incentive such as there is for cathode, where the current rate is about $230 a ton, which is the highest in the province because they're exporting everything to the States.
Okay, next up is Director Seegers.
Thank you. I have a few questions, so I'll start and then I'll leave my hand up. I'll come back after. Different order because of GM Rosenboom. You talked about updating the solid waste management plan in a couple of years. I notice in here it says that it was 2011 and it set targets to reach by 2016. So how frequently should this be done? Is it every 5 years? Is it every 10 years? If you're saying a couple of years, then we're probably looking at a 10-year review. But is it typically not 5 years that it's redone?
Steph?
Thanks for the question. Typically, solid waste management plans are a 10-year plan or a little bit longer if need be for regional districts, or a little bit less. If there is a big shift in something that's in the solid waste management plan, usually around disposal, then that would trigger a solid waste management plan update process. But the ministry recommends approximately every 2 years, or I'm sorry, every 10 years.
Okay, so follow up to that then. We set targets for 2016. Are there also targets in there for the other years, given it would be a 10-year plan?
When the solid waste management plan was developed in 2010, the targets were set for 2016, and those are the targets that are included in the solid waste management plan.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Director Pratt.
Thank you. I'm going to echo Director Hiltz's comments about the flatlining. I'm really disappointed that we haven't been able to get beyond where that 56% diversion as being the high point, and especially when our goal is 69. And we've seen, what's interesting is we've seen in the past couple of months with a pandemic and how it can change the will of people and change the people's behavior. And is there more messaging that we can do? Is there any way that we can get more buy-in about the diversion, about reducing our waste? there's some positive pieces here. I know, we use 0.8 of a year rather than a full year, which is fantastic. That shows that there's a little bit less going in, but we still have 6.1 years left. We have to look at what are our next steps. What is, are we able to put in a new landfill? Where are we at with that process? So I guess, so there's two questions there. How can we get more buy-in? What else can we do? Which I know PMAC and the renewal of the solid waste management plan will help, but we don't have a lot of time. So what is our next step? And where are we at with that?
Staff, please.
I can start, and I will think Robin will have something to add to it. In terms of next step, we started working on the project scope, etc., on the procurement process for the study to be completed this year, for on the options analysis for what to do with the landfill when it's full. So we hope to bring an award report for that in a couple of months for the board's approval. And I think it's important to know that hopefully in 2 years, this diversion number will be significantly different due to the fact that the organics program will be implemented by that time. And at the same time, the board asked staff to do a survey this year on the support in the community for a recycling diversion curbside program as well. So there are initiatives underway, some more concrete, like the curbside food, and the other one is more exploratory. But these numbers will change due to the fact that even the curbside garbage food waste will be implemented later this year. It will be really interesting for me. I'm interested to see if at the end of the year we can see a COVID impact in these numbers, if we see it on a month-by-month basis, and if so, what can we learn from that for future years? And that will be a good analysis to do later this year.
Okay, I'm just going to add a follow-up to that, which is, have we looked at any programs to improve diversion of commercial waste, particularly construction waste? And are there any examples from other communities of programs like that?
In terms of materials from the construction sector, so clean wood or dirty/contaminated wood, drywall, metal, those programs already exist. Where there's potential opportunity, again, the recycling markets would need to open up for there to be an opportunity to collect and then divert the materials. So whether that's in, say, plastic wrapping or the ties around the packages, it's limited. I'll say that within BC, Canada, and the United States, it's limited beyond those main materials for the construction sector.
And to add to that, I think the fact that one of the materials from the construction sector, due to the change in the market conditions, now are burying is the roofing, and that's impacting our numbers. So it's not that we want to bury it, but there is nothing else we can do with the material. So in terms, and I think in the past there have been several initiatives, several requests sent to the province to take more leadership in initiating and supporting diversion opportunities and for materials. And I think that should continue to be pursued.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Director Lee.
I noticed that my manager had something to add to that.
Oh, sorry. Missed that.
Thanks. I just wanted to add that staff received some correspondence recently from the Ministry of Environment, where later this year they are looking to do some engagement around next steps or which product categories could be targeted for EPR in BC. So we're anxiously awaiting that opportunity to move that forward, and hopefully that will align with the Canadian Councils of Ministry of Environment with the items and the product categories that have been listed in that report.
Maybe you can clarify what an EPR is.
So EPR is Extended Producer Responsibility Programs, and that's where at the point of purchase, a fee is levied. Sometimes it's shown on the receipt, sometimes it's not. And that fee covers the cost of recycling. So then when the item is purchased, it can be dropped off for recycling at no charge at the time of drop off. So paint, tires, residential packaging and paper products, those are some examples, electronics of some existing EPR or extended producer responsibility, also sometimes referred to as stewardship programs. And those are governed under the BC recycling regulation.
It would also be great if the federal government could bring in more legislation around single-use plastics. I mean, it's appalling to me that when I buy a bale of straw, that it is completely encased in plastic, and we've bought lumber from the building supply and it's all wrapped up with plastic. It's just crazy. Anyway, I'm ranting, but I get to because I'm the chair. So next up on my list is Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of echoing Chair Pratt's comments, you know, we almost need to declare a garbage pandemic, because when you look at the expected life of the landfill, you know, schedule for reviewing the policies, you know, we're approaching the wall at about 70 miles an hour, if not faster. In Gibson's, we're currently working on a bylaw that would actually be a fine for including recyclables in your curbside pickup. It's about to go out for public hearing once we can do that in a more meaningful way. But I think, you know, it's sort of daunting what's ahead of us. Chair McMahon mentioned the plastics, and I think, you know, as a group, and I think it needs to be taken to, you know, probably UCBM, that there has to be pressure on the federal government to create packaging guidelines. You know, we're sort of trying to deal with the problem at ground level, but it's being, you know, brought to us because there's no consistent direction from above. And, you know, packaging seems to be a convenience, but the direction needs to come from the top. So I think, you know, as a regional district, we need to get together with other, you know, districts that are faced with the same situation and bring, you know, redirect it back to the source so we can get some proper direction to deal with it. You know, everyone's struggling with it, but the direction needs to come from the top, not the bottom.
I'm wondering if it would be any help to see what resolutions the SCRD has sent to UBCM on solid waste over the last few years. I'll just throw that out there. The next person on my list is Director Seegers.
Thank you. One of the things, I'm going to go back to the organics just briefly and just make a comment. I do note that in the solid waste management plan, the diversion of organics was to have been implemented a number of years ago, and that would have brought that diversion rate down. Didn't happen. It's taken many more years to get to where it was anticipated we would have been probably in 2014 or 2015. So that's one of the big impacts on the diversion rate. And then the conversation that's happening here is around basically the ICI, right, and the EPR. So the packaging, and, you know, as been indicated, we are dealing with it when we buy it to pay for disposal of it or diverting it or whatever, it's not going to be just a Canadian solution, because products that we buy don't just originate in Canada. They're global. So this has to even go to a higher level to look at how do we deal with packaging and distribution of products. I mean, how many times do we go and buy a small product that's in a huge package? That's a waste. How do we change that so that we don't even have to? I mean, sure, yes, we can still do the diversion piece and pay the fee for, diverting it at the end, but why do we create it up front? And how do we deal with that piece? That's a much bigger conversation. That's a global conversation to deal with the complete supply chain. So I think we are talking to UBCM, we are talking to the federal government. How do we take this conversation bigger, I think, is the conversation that we should probably sit with and see what we can do to impact that. That's it.
Okay. Director Lee, are you still in the queue?
Well, I was originally, and I still am. You skipped over me, Donna.
Oh,
I'm feeling really neglected. I think most of what I was thinking about has been said. My notes say that zero waste is, first off, it's a buzzword, but if you analyze what the typical household discards, including myself, I see no way that you'd ever be to zero waste. But it's still a pretty good thing, but it might have outlived its time. And I think it's absolutely true we're not getting any help from the top. If you just consider the EPR and what was recyclable and what isn't, it changed. And then we got to try and educate people, and just about the time they get used to so that they can start doing it, we'll change it again, make sure they can't do it. Somehow we need to focus on education and us ourselves responding to changes in the volume and the type of material that is being thrown away, and make sure that people understand the problem and what they can do to minimize the problem, because it's all of our problem. And in fact, it's all expensive. Even the EPR, it sounds like, oh boy, we're going to get it free now. No, it's way more expensive for the taxpayer to recycle. We are paying for that. And so if we were really serious, we might even have a person dedicated strictly to sit on top of the zero waste aspect and make sure everything's happening. I don't know whether it's cost effective for us to do that or not, or whether we could afford to do it and have someone just focused on it. But when you consider that our targets were set to 2016 and we haven't got a new target, and in fact, because we don't, it's been 10 years ago, the makeup of the garbage is different. So we don't know if we could even, we might be lucky we've held our own compared to what we can recycle in the volume. So those are my comments. And I think if we have to start looking at ourselves as well as the senior levels of government. And if we need to push up and make new motions to the UBCM, we should be ready, but we should know what we're talking about. And to know what you're talking about is expensive. So we can talk or we can do something. I don't know which one we want to do.
GM Rosenboom, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in response to the discussion so far, recyclables. I think there is a role for the SCRD, always a role for the SCRD to play in how can we reduce the amount of garbage produced, and how residents and the community at large, what they're buying in terms of packaging, what they accept to buy and what they choose to buy. If you're strictly looking from a landfill life perspective to this question. So not from a bigger perspective on waste reduction, but just how can we improve landfill life to the max of our ability. There are other products that would require attention than plastic packaging. Plastic packaging is a lot, but it's not taking up the most landfill life in terms of material types. Other types are a big one, for example, which is not largely widely discussed yet, is furniture. Furniture is huge volume. It's hard to compact, and they often consist of several material types, and it's very difficult to separate. So hence there is not a lot of recycling market for it. So if a couch is dropped at the landfill, it's compacted a little bit, but it's still a large volume. So those types of materials, they take up a lot of landfill space, and there can be a lot of other waste disposed before it's made up for the same volume as one couch.
Very good point. Next up is Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Sherry. Well, I would like to kind of formulate a recommendation about this, to tie in PMAC somehow to this. So I'm trying to figure out some words, but the initial one would be to refer it to PMAC for consideration. And I guess what I'm trying to, what can PMAC provide to the board in terms of advice, I guess is what I'm trying to get a sense of. But it's what I would like PMAC to be able to say is have a go at why we're flatline and where they think the opportunities for increased diversion, whether that's furniture, couches. I'm not sure where to tie these resources, the staff time, PMAC, and the board. And I'm just trying to figure out where's the appropriate place for this to sit.
Great question. Staff?
If I might give a shot on answering it, my take would be, I would suggest that PMAC focuses on the things that are within the control of the SCRD, on the items that are actually directly impacting us. So what are the things we can actually do, initiate, programs we can initiate? I think they can make maybe suggestions on what the board can do in terms of advocacy, but I think that's not, but if there is any opportunity, I wouldn't mind if they can review and reconsider what we can do within just looking at their perspective. Having said that, I also realized that the scope, the terms of reference of PMAC is an evaluation committee. It's not to take the initiatives and to take it to the next steps as solid waste management plan. So I think it's good that they reflect on this information, evaluate it, process it, and provide recommendations on what the SCRD could explore further, and bring that back to the board.
Okay, I'm going to go to Director Lee, but then I'll be back to Director Hiltz to see if he's got wording for his motion that's still not quite a motion.
I like Director Hill's thinking on this. It does sound like a positive step if we were to do that. When I was actually adding to Director Hiltz's thoughts in that I've kind of envisioned the PMAC as helping us with our problem right now by what we can directly influence in the next 6 or 7 years, as long as we can still bury it here. And that's why I thought one of the reasons we put PMAC back together. I also understood, though, that perhaps we could use PMAC to actually work through the next steps, help us with the next steps on the solid waste management plan as well. They're definitely a citizen group that hopefully they're very knowledgeable on it. And that would be cool if they could do that too. It sounds like it's a cheaper way of getting what we need too.
Hey.
So I might as well continue. I had another one, and I think Director Rosenblum hit it right on the nose when he said exactly what is our focus. Is it to make sure the landfill don't fill up, or is it to divert as much as we can for the sake of the environment? I think I'd like to think they're one and the same, but that's not necessarily so, which is true. And so I guess we need to make sure what our objective is as well as we go down this road.
I'm going to chip in there to say that one thing that we do is public education. So if we identify furniture as a problem, then that is something that we could target some public education at, because I hadn't really thought about it myself. And, you know, maybe there is an opportunity there. Do other regional districts or municipalities have an education program around furniture? Is it possible to, you know, liaise with groups in the community who are furniture related? Just a thought. Director Hiltz, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I got something here, or if you want me to read. That the ISC refer the Regional Diversion Annual Update report to PMAC and have PMAC consider reflect on the report, particularly with respect to aspects which are within the regional district control. As an example, furniture and initiatives which could be brought forward to future ISC.
Okay. Just wondering if there's more detail in that motion than we actually require.
Okay. First go.
I'm just going to go back over to GM Rosenboom because he had his hand up earlier.
Yeah, sorry I want to respond to comment by directly in terms of the role of PMAC in the solid waste management plan. Legally, PMAC, as it is right now, cannot support the development of a solid waste management plan. They will be dissolved. There's a legal requirement. However, when PMAC was initiated last year, it was already contemplated that the membership of PMAC could be well versed to be part of the group, the citizen group that will support the development of a solid waste management plan. And in terms of the motion, maybe suggest for review, we refer to PMAC for review and consideration of short-term actions to be taken by the SCRD.
That sounds good. Director Hiltz, does that suit you?
Terrific.
Okay.
I'll move that.
You'll move that. Tracy, do you have that?
I do have that.
Awesome. Do we have a seconder? I see a seconder. Do we have any further discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Nobody is opposed. The motion passes. Is there anything further arising from this report? Do we wish to look back at previous solid waste motions or solid waste whatsits that have been sent to AVICC and UBCM from the SCRD in the last, say, 10 years? Because I see no reason to reinvent the wheel. If we've already been there, over to Director Pratt.
I'm also wondering, have we sent anything to FCM? But I'd be happy to make that as bring it back to future committee, all previous advocacy motions around solid waste management plans to from to AVICC, UBCM, and FCM.
That's great. That's a motion. Did I see a second? I saw a second. Discussion. Was that Director Seegers?
Thank you. I guess I'm not clear what happens from UBCM with the recommendations that we put forward there. Are those automatically forwarded to FCM? Is that part of the protocol or not? Right. So I think we might need some clarity around that piece as well.
Sounds like we need a little board education. Director Pratt?
Oops. I was just going to say it would depend on what the advocacy avenue would be, I would imagine. It's similar as AVICC. If it was something that was very regional in nature, it might not go to UBCM. Or if it was more about an operational piece within the area. So my experience with FCM, I don't believe that they're automatically forwarded, but we can certainly look at that.
Okay. So, any further discussion of the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any further business arising from, oh, I did have one question that I had forgotten to ask, which was on page 24. I noticed that the SIGD, their annual tonnage has gone down and their diversion rate has gone up. And I was just curious as to that they are bucking the trend for the SCRD. So I was curious as to whether staff had any observations about that.
Thanks for the question. I can only speak to trends, which out of the 4 jurisdictions, 3 had lower garbage tonnages in 2019 than 2018, and 1 had a minor increase. But so the rationale as to why 1 would go up or down, I don't believe, other than, there was no new programs implemented by any jurisdictions in 2019, with the exception that you'd have a full year at the town of Gibson's for their food waste collection program.
It's interesting. I'm just curious because they've gone down steadily since 2014. Is that their garbage has gone down and their recycling has gone up, but their overall tonnage has also gone down. So I'm just curious about it. It'd be interesting to know. Director Toth.
Actually, just one observation I wanted to chime in. Used to have family with property on lease land, and I noticed here that the spring cleanup numbers are included in that. And anecdotally, I've noticed over the last few years, the volume of stuff going curbside for spring cleanup has been going down. So that might be a source of a lot of their decrease in tonnage.
Okay, time to move on. Next item on the agenda is contract award for groundwater investigation. Do we get to go to the GM this time?
Yes, I'm not going to divert this one to anybody else. My manager was supposed to be here, but he has internet connection issues today, so I'm going to take this one. The purpose of this report is to request approval to award 2 contracts to the same company for one for the groundwater investigation phase 2 part 2, which include the drilling of wells and the testing of wells on 4 new locations, as well as the drilling of test wells on along Grey Creek, where we've tried to seek a good test well already in 2018. The one contract is of the value of $272, and the other one is for $148,000. Both contracts are proposed to be awarded to Kauai Water Dynamics, and they are the most favorable of the 11 bids we received on this RFP. I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay. Director Toth.
I'm first. 11 bids received seems quite incredible. One question I had was how many bids were received for the previous investigation? And then as a follow-up to that, I noticed that there is also contingency built in to upsize some of the wells straight to production sizing. And so I was wondering if that was going to be at the time of drilling, or if that was something that staff were going to try and analyze ahead of time. A little bit of clarity on how it's decided if something's going to be upsized to a production well right away or not.
Thank you for the question. Yes, that will be determined prior, based on site investigation and more detailed analysis. And it is always a little bit of risk if you're going for the 8-inch or not, because there is a significant additional expense associated with it. But if there's high likelihood, it can also have a good that you actually get good water supply. If you know that you're going to get a good water supply, as we did when we drilled the second well at Church Road, then it's definitely something we consider. And some of the wells we're going to explore are in the vicinity of other wells, so that's why we will explore it further.
Did you have any comment about the 11 bids and whether we had 11 bids last time?
I know that last time we did not receive 11 bids. Usually it's half of that. But I recently noticed that also on another tender, on another RFP we did for similar services, we received also 10 or 12 bids. So it's a similar amount of money and amount of bids.
Interesting. Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it's great to see it going forward. And my questions were about the firmness and fixedness of the drill targets, especially in the Langdale Aquifer. And I don't remember if there's been any previous desktop studies for the Langdale Aquifer area, and just how the targets are being defined this time in areas that haven't had kind of drilling around them. Again, my interest is mostly at the Langdale Aquifer.
Thank you. Any drilling in terms of targets, we're always trying to, we don't set specific targets up front on what we want to achieve. We want to achieve, we're looking for wells that could provide water to the community in a sustainable manner. And sustainable means impacts to the creek should be minimal, to any creeks in the area should be minimal, impacts to other water users in the area should be minimal. There should be certainty that, or high level of confidence that we can use this well for long term, so 30, 40 years ahead, and still not significantly drawing down the aquifer. And so climate change impacts will, as a result, also play a factor there. So it's not only, we will not look at how can we maximize production from this well regardless. No, it is the impacts and the long-term sustainability will be part of the consideration and part of the report that will be brought forward later this year.
I'm just going to jump in for a moment here and ask you to give a little perspective on the Eastbourne well, because people may think that that was drilled under the same circumstances that we will be drilling our wells now, and that you could, you know, drill a well and then pump out all the water and it would all be gone.
Yes, Eastbourne is, of course, in the island is a unique circumstance because there's an aquifer underneath most of the islands that is really confined. It's a small area. It's really a bubble. When it's empty, and it recharges in the summer, in the winter. All aquifers on the coast are way larger in size and have let's put it that way, a drop of water that falls on the Eastbourne area, disappears into the aquifer, and there's a high chance that in the summer it will be pumped up again to be used. So the difference between when the water is falling on an aquifer and recharge is about maybe 1 year to 2 years. In most areas on the coast, the time lag is about 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So the recharge, if rain falls on the mountain, it will trickle into the ground, and it could actually take easily 50, sometimes even longer, before it hits the coast where it's being pumped up in a well. So it's not that there will be a lot of immediate impacts of any drilling on the total sustainability of an aquifer, and that's why we're doing the long-term projections to actually see what is that recharge zone, what is the timing, and how can we avoid that anything we do now is not impacting, does not have an impact in 40, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
I don't believe those kind of studies were required at the time the Eastbourne well was established, right?
No, that's those kind of studies. Groundwater regulation, groundwater wells only need to be regulated, only are regulated since 2016. Prior to that, these kind of studies could be done, but it was all because the person drilling the well wanted to have that information, not because it was required. And now it's all required to get a water license issued.
Thank you. Director Seegers?
All right, thank you. On page 30, it indicates that the test well drilling and testing will take place over the summer months. So I just want to say thank you to staff for moving this budget proposal forward as quickly as you did, because I know in previous tests and things that we did, we had to wait because we needed the summer period in order to do the well drilling to ensure that there weren't impacts to other wells and creeks, etc., during the dry season. So thank you for moving this forward, and because that means you just get information back quicker. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, folks, do I see any motions? There's recommendations on page 28. Director Pratt.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendations on page 28, and big, huge thank you to staff.
Excellent. And I see a seconder. Any further discussion? All in favor of the recommendations of the motion? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes unanimously. And we get to move on to correspondence. We have 2 items of correspondence. Oh, yes. Does anybody wish to, this is actually good news. Does anybody wish to speak to the good news? Jim?
Thank you. This is good news. However, we applied for, this is good news for these 2 projects, for these 2 facilities, because they will allow us to move forward there with determining a long-term plan for these facilities. We applied for 6 grants. These were 2 of them, so we're happy for these 2 facilities. For the other 4, we're currently assessing if there's a likelihood of getting them awarded if we apply again for the summer intake, or if it would be, or if there are other opportunities or needs or to get going with these projects and maybe use reserves, and we'll provide an update on that at our June IC meeting.
Good, thank you. Are there any questions, Director Hills?
Thanks. Was there any indication why the other 4 were unsuccessful?
That's what we're currently contacting the ministry to find that out. And I expect that it is oversubscription as usual, and it's interesting to know that these two were the biggest funds we requested. So maybe they only wanted to give us two and take the biggest two. So we're currently assessing that and trying to get that information to see if it's actually worthwhile to apply again.
Good. Director Lee.
Yes, GM Rosenblum has a very much a better memory than me. I know we need to continue the asset management program, or at least I think that's our intent. We haven't tied the continuation of those to these grants, have we? Or have we tied it to the grants?
Staff?
No, we have not. However, the determination of the long-term plans was going to, is in a way dependent on these plans, because these feasibility studies that these grants were for, we're going to provide us with the information on what our future options would be to upgrade or replace or advance these facilities. So there will be an operational, that's what we're currently considering, and how can we move forward with the other four projects in terms of determining what our long-term plan is in absence of these grants, and how can we potentially fund these from reserves if they are available in those facilities.
Thank you. Director Hiltz, your hand is still up. Did you have? No. Okay. I'm not seeing any further hands. We've reached the end of this portion of the agenda. We'll be doing a motion to go in camera. I believe we move the in camera and then we go to public questions. Is that the correct order? So I'm looking for a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with section 92B of the community charter. I see a motion. I see a seconder. All in favor? Thank you. We are all in favor. Now, disembodied IT. Is there anyone in our gallery with questions?
I regret not. There was a gentleman. He left without asking.
We're not popular. We're just not. So, all right. It is now 11:30. Shall we take a 5 or 10 minute break before we go in camera? Okay, thank you, everybody. I am willing to entertain a motion to adjourn this infrastructure meeting of May 21st. I see a motion, I see a seconder, all in favor. Thank you very much. It was a slice. Look forward to seeing you guys in person someday.